And just to put a plug in, one of the reasons I think that we have been successful as a group over the years in frequency coordination is APCO is the only one of the coordinators that uses local advisors. People like Gary and I that, we're resident here in the area. We understand the problems here, and I can assure you our problems are totally different than Kansas problems or New York problems. They can be similar, but there's a lot of differences just from terrain, from the way systems are put together, all kinds of different things that go into it. But since we understand it, and the other thing that really I think has been a strength over the years for us is the transparency. By bringing these applications up at a monthly meeting, letting everyone look at them. Sometimes we have to, Gary or I has to sign off on something because of time constraints before you see it, but it's always brought up in the agenda so you know about it. And it's helped. I'm trying to go quick here. We don't have a lot of time, but I don't have a lot of other slides. I'll give you one example. A few years ago, there was an application that came through from IMSA, which is Fire and Special Emergency. It stands for International Municipal, or what is it? It's the old call box systems. If you have security systems and things like that, it's signaling associate. I think it's. Anyway, they do fire coordination basically, and they do special emergency, which is your ambulance companies. And they kept putting it through an application, and we kept telling them, this is going to cause interference. And they wouldn't listen. And since it was a special emergency, we couldn't, and the problem was that it wasn't a co-channel interference problem, it was an adjacent channel. For those that aren't technical, it means that the channel is right next door to the one that was being licensed, and the one that was getting interfered with was the city of Long Beach. And we went through a lot of meetings. Finally, because Long Beach complained directly to the FCC, we had a conference call with Michael Wilhelm, who is quite high up in the Public Safety Bureau there. And he kind of told both parties when the IMSA and them were saying, hey, this is it. We should get this channel, and it shouldn't matter that there's interference. And he goes, look, if you get us, and you better work this out and figure out something. Because if we get involved, you probably neither one of you will like the answer that we give you on it, which they can do different. They can order different things because they're shared channels. This was a VHF channel shared. It was hard, but through some work that we worked together with IMSA, and Gary and I hunted, and we finally found another channel that would work for the ambulance company and got them to license that and solve the interference problem. But that's another reason why I say you do not own the channels. You're under the FCC rules, and you want to be careful which rules you insist are.
If I may add something to that, please, Dave.
Yeah, please go ahead, Gary.
There was still on the telephone conference call a lack of cooperation from the other people, and we know we share the things, we try to accommodate others as well, but this is just something that was bad. And the representatives for the other party said, well, just what can you do about it? And the whole attitude changed when the FCC authority said, well, we can cancel your license to start with. Then it became, how may we help you and work together?
Yeah. So, I think that's a great example of why the way we do it, if this had been an APCO application, Gary and I would have never let it through the process, and the group wouldn't have. It would have shown up as a problem. We would have said, no, we got to do something else. And believe me, it's much better to do without a channel or take longer in order to get something that works and that neither party is, you don't cause problems to someone else and they don't cause problems to you. So it's kind of like almost an insurance policy. When you come to us, that we're going to do everything we can to make sure no one is harmed, no one else, and that you get a channel that actually works for you and that you don't suffer interference. Not that we can guarantee there won't be interference, but we try really hard. So last point on here, the frequency coordinators, they do the application, administrative, and technical work for the FCC. The FCC doesn't have the staff back there to go through, nor the knowledge either. It's so complicated on some of these that they have the frequency coordinators doing, and it's a good process. It works out most of the time. So the coordinators, technically, they recommend the frequencies and the technical parameters. Obviously, a lot of times when we get applications in, you folks have either your technical people or maybe a consultant has helped you out and determine some of that, and then we just go from there. So I mentioned that 800 and 700 go through regional planning committees. This is another step. These bands goes way back to the 800 NIPSPAC band back in about 1989 when the FCC put the rules together for that band when they gave that exclusive block of spectrum to public safety. And what happens is you folks, every agency has a vote in the regional planning committee. We have a plan that's been filed with the FCC, so in effect, and that's not to get too legal, so I may not be saying it quite correctly from a legal standpoint, but effectively it becomes part of the FCC rules, the plan. So that's why you have to come through the planning committee and follow those rules. But when you follow those rules, again, you get exclusive use for that channel. You're super protected from interference from someone else coming on that would interfere you. Our region has a couple things, obviously because of the density and the demand for spectrum in the urban areas, the urban LA County, urban Orange County, San Diego County, then it spills over to San Bernardino, Riverside, Ventura, which parts of that, where those counties are also getting very urbanized, so there's a lot of demand, and the channels go quick. They've been allocated, but there is a process that if you need them, you can engineer in a usage, or you can show that you meet the requirements or the technical specifications that we put into the plans and into the guidance for the plans, and you can get a channel. For more information, and oh yeah, each band is a separate committee, although it's common people. I chair 700, Jen Donovan of Orange County chairs the 800 NIPSPAC one. You fill out for both of them. You're going to submit applications at the caprad.ap.org in that that's shown here in the bullet point. And then the documents, you can either find them at caprad.org or you can find it on our CPRA website. So I put that there for you. And I would guess that we can probably make these slides post them on the CPRA website so you can get those if you can't get them written down. But that's where you can find out more information for that process. And last, I'll just touch on some interference. As I said, no one can guarantee you're not going to get interference. The bands are more and more congested. So sometimes you're just going to get it. Obviously, that was the whole reason that the rebanding for 800 came about, was interference from Nextel, which is now Sprint, for their IDEN network, which is was their network that was kind of quasi-cellular and also LMR at the same time. Right now, the current state is, and this has changed recently within the last year and a half, of how you report interference and what kind of support you can expect. But it's not as quick actually as you used to get, because the FCC Enforcement Bureau has shrunk down a whole lot. They've closed offices, they don't have as many people, so they can't respond as quickly as they used to. But APCO has an MOU with the Enforcement Bureau to collect and try to resolve interference complaints. If it can't be resolved quickly by APCO, then it gets referred back to the Enforcement Bureau for them to act on. And that whole process, I gave you the link to that on the FCC website, and it has the links to how you file with APCO and everything else there. There is an exception to that. If you have an 800 megahertz system, whether it's NIPS-PAC or the interleaved, the higher frequency 800, you can't, if you think if it's interference, more than likely from cellular operation, then you'd want to go to the link that I gave you there for the CTIA site, and that will trigger the cell companies within I forget the radius, but within a reasonable radius of your site that's getting interference. The cell companies have to respond within 24 hours and come out and try to help determine and correct any interference that they may be causing. So that is something you want to keep in your notes at your office if you have an 800 system. I think that's the end. Let me get back to, oops.